Good evening, friends. Welcome to the daily answer writing series at 10 p.m. Today, a very important topic I have taken for the discussion. The editorial I have picked it from the Indian Express, and it pertains to General Studies Paper 3, Agriculture part. So let me just share this editorial with you. So this was the editorial. Basically the focus was editorial is that what should the budget do? What should the budget do? Tomorrow the budget will be presented in the parliament. So what should the budget do for the farmers? Because in the last 1 year, we have seen farmers were protesting for various reasons. So what should the government do so that the farmers get the relief? Okay. So here the basic focus of the author is that in the past 30 years, okay, what has happened is that what we have done is that we have focused more on subsidy driven approach in the agriculture sector. In subsidy driven approach, what happens is that we give farmers some sort of income support, whether it is in form of MSP, or whether it is in form of fertilizer subsidy, or whether in the form of power subsidy, okay, or water subsidy. We give them some sort of subsidy. Okay. On the other hand, what has happened because of the fiscal space, because of the constricted fiscal space, okay, what has happened is that as the subsidy has increased, okay, so investments have declined. Investments in agriculture have declined. Subsidies have grown and investments have declined. Okay, that is the main reason of all the problems in the agriculture sector, according to the author. According to the author, the main problem in the Indian agriculture sector is that there is low productivity. Okay, farmers' income are not high because their productivity is very low. And the reason their productivity is low is that the capital investment, both public and private, in agriculture has been falling in the last 30 years. On the other hand, what has happened is that subsidies have kept on increasing. And that has restricted government from investing in agriculture. Okay, so what has happened is that investments have declined. Investments in the form of building infrastructure, investments in the form of research and development in the agriculture, investments in the form of irrigation facilities, investments in the form of market facilities, that has not come in the last 30 years. And that is the prime reason of low productivity in agriculture. And that is the reason farmers are poor. That is the only reason farmers are poor. Here, I would like to show you some trends, okay, which will really surprise you. Okay, which will really surprise you. Let me just show this. Okay, so this is basically this is a trend. Okay, this is a trend. If you see in 1980-81, okay, the investments in agriculture as a percentage, of GDP was around 3.9% of the GDP. 3.9% of the GDP was investment, okay, in agriculture. Okay, as a percentage of agriculture GDP, there was 3.9% investments. On the other hand, as a percentage of agri GDP, subsidy was only 2.8%. So subsidy was less and investments in agriculture as a percentage of agri GDP was higher, okay, in 1980-81. But subsequently in the last 30 years, what has happened is that if you see, subsidies have grown. Subsidies have grown. Okay, and it is around 8% of the agri GDP. Okay, 8%. Just imagine. On the other hand, investments have declined to around 2%. Investments have declined to around 2% of the agri GDP. Okay. And that is the main reason why Indian agriculture has not grown more than 4% in the last 30 years. Indian agriculture has not grown more than 4% at the rate of more than 4% in the last 30 years. It has not grown. It has somewhere hovered around 2%, 3%, 1%, sometimes 1% also. Just imagine around 50% of the population is dependent on agriculture and allied activities. And just see the growth rate. Just see the growth rate of the agriculture sector. This means 50% of the people, their incomes are growing at a very slow pace. 50% of the people. And these are the people who live in rural India, and these are the people who are poor. So lack of investments in agriculture is one of the sole reasons for persistent poverty in India. Persistent poverty in India. Why we have not been able to tackle this problem of poverty? This is one of the reasons, because most of the poor are basically involved in agriculture. And in agriculture, what is happening is that incomes are not increasing. Why incomes are not increasing? Because productivity is not improving. And why productivity is not improving? Because investments are not increasing. On the other hand, government has been pleading because of subsidies. Subsidies in the form of fertilizer subsidy, subsidy in the form of power subsidy, subsidy in the form of crop insurance. Okay, there are various kinds of subsidies, credit subsidies, input subsidies. Huge subsidies have been basically given in the last 30 years. But we all know that this subsidy driven approach has failed to improve the growth rate in agriculture, has failed to improve the growth rate in agriculture. And this makes the farmer perennially dependent on the government. See, what we need is a sustainable solution to the problem of agri crisis in India. And that sustainable solution can only come by improving the productivity of Indian agriculture, by improving the productivity of Indian farmers. That can only basically improve their incomes and can alleviate majority of the people out of the poverty. Okay, that is the only way we can do it. There is no other way. There is no other way. See, adjusted to inflation, fertilizer subsidy has risen more than 15 times in the last 30 years, irrigation subsidy more than 6 times, and electricity subsidy more than 30 times in the last 30 years. Just imagine the kind of subsidies we have been giving, but what has happened is that it has not been able to basically yield the result, the desired result. On the other hand, there is a study done by Mr. Gulati that for every 10 lakh investment in the farm research, 328 people come out of poverty. Likewise, ₹1 spent in the agri research and development results 11 rupees. See, always remember one thing. Okay, this investment, capital investment, has a multiplier effect. Multiplier effect means 1 rupee investment can lead to 1x. Okay, 1x result. Okay, here it is giving 10 times result. Okay, similarly, if the same money is spent on agriculture, 10 lakh rupees, only 20 agriculture subsidy, only 26 people are basically taken out of poverty. And the contribution of 1 rupee spent in the fertilizer subsidy gives only 0.88 rupee to the agri GDP. This means what? It does not, subsidies do not have a multiplier effect. On the other hand, subsidy return is less than what the money is invested. Further, subsidies have led to various kinds of anomalies in Indian agriculture, like distortion in cropping pattern, like erosion of the fertility of soil, like declining of water table, like various kinds of problems have happened because of subsidies in Indian agriculture for the past 30 years. Various kinds of problems, particularly the distortion of the agri cropping pattern is one of the main problems which has happened because of subsidy driven approach. Therefore, what we need to do is we need to move towards investment driven approach. We need to move towards market driven approach. We need to move towards research and development, empowering farmers rather than making them perennially dependent on us, rather than making them perennially dependent on us. So I have framed one question today. Let me just show you the question. Okay, the question which I have framed today is okay, critically examine the relationship between or critically examine the debate between investments versus subsidy. Investments versus subsidy in Indian agriculture. Critically examine it. So we have told you, first of all, you have to explain what do we mean by investment in agriculture. Investments in the form of basically improving the irrigation infrastructure, investments in the form of R&D, investments in the form of market construction. So these are some of the kinds of investments in the form of seeds. On the other hand, what do we mean by subsidy and what kind of subsidy is given in the country? Fertilizer subsidy, water subsidy, power subsidy. And then what we have to show is that investments have a multiplier effect. They have a multiplier effect. 1 rupee invested leads to 11 rupees. Whereas here 1 rupee investment in fertilizers gives 0.8 rupees. Thus, investments is more productive. And that is why if we focus more on investments, productivity of the agriculture will improve. But in the last 30 years, what has happened, you can draw the graph which I have shown you, that subsidies have risen, whereas investments have fallen down. And that is the reason of the low productivity in Indian agriculture. So if we want to change this scenario, we want to rationalize the subsidies. See, whenever we talk about the rationalization of subsidies, the major argument given is that in order to control fiscal deficit, we have to do it. But the bigger argument is to improve the productivity. Okay, fiscal deficit is important. Controlling fiscal deficit is important. But larger importance is basically improving the productivity of Indian agriculture, which can only happen if there is investment in Indian agriculture, and which can only happen when there is public investment, because public investment has a crowding in effect of private investments also. And we have seen that generally private investment do not come in agriculture till public investment comes. Okay, so it's very important for the government to invest in agriculture. And that is why if you see, recently government has come out with agriculture infrastructure fund, because infrastructure building is very important. Agriculture infrastructure fund. So that's it, friend. I have one more announcement to make. I will be coming out with a small series of economic survey. And in the next 15 days, we will cover economic survey in depth. All the questions, all the type of expected questions which can come from economic survey, I will be helping you to cover. So please do not miss the economic survey sessions. And if you like this session, please hit the like button, please subscribe the channel, and please share with